The heavy oak door creaked open as Captain Peter Morgan stepped into his darkened home. The familiar scent of lemon polish, now tainted with something else, something wrong, filled the air. 8 months in Afghanistan had sharpened his instincts, and every nerve in his body screamed that something was terribly amiss. The house stood silent, too silent for a Saturday morning when his family should be bustling about. Linda, Melissa, his deep voice echoed through the empty hallway. Yet there was no response, only the hollow tick of the grandfather clock his late wife Sarah had loved so much. Then, almost imperceptibly, a whimper broke the silence. His combat-trained ears caught it immediately, coming from the kitchen. Moving swiftly with his heart pounding against his ribs, Peter reached the kitchen door. He frowned at the sight of the locked door. What kind of house locks its kitchen door? His hands trembled as he fumbled with his key ring. One twist, and the truth he was about to discover would shatter everything he believed about family, trust, and the people we leave behind. A faint voice from inside called out, "Daddy came." It was the voice of his 15-year-old daughter, Melissa, now broken and afraid. As the door swung open, the sight before him stopped his heart. His precious daughter, his only connection to Sarah, was lying on a thin mattress on the cold kitchen floor. Her eyes, filled with tears and fear, met his, and in that instant he knew this was not the homecoming he had imagined. It was the beginning of a nightmare that would unravel everything he thought he knew about the family he had left behind. Captain Peter Morgan was not born into wealth, but he was rich in principles. At 42, his weathered face told the story of a man who had served his country proudly for 2 decades, earning modest decorations that hung in his home office. Yet the most precious medal he had ever received was the small heart-shaped locket his late wife, Sarah, had given him before she passed away during Melissa's birth 15 years ago. For 5 years, Peter had raised Melissa alone, balancing military duties with bedtime stories and deployment preparations, all while cherishing every moment of her growing up, from her dance recitals to her academic triumphs. Their bond had grown unshakable, forged in the quiet moments when he would brush her hair, just as Sarah had taught him, and in the proud afternoons spent watching her excel at science fairs. Melissa inherited her mother's golden hair and determination, yet her eyes held the depth of Peter's own, as if carrying wisdom beyond her years. Then came the day Linda Carter entered their lives, a divorced mother of 2 boys who appeared to understand the delicate balance of grief and hope that defined the Morgan household. Her sons, Jaith and Kyle, seemed to be well-adjusted teenagers despite their own father's abandonment. Jay, now 17, showed a protective instinct toward his younger siblings, while 14-year-old Kyle shared Melissa's passion for academics. Their marriage, forged a decade ago, had once seemed like a second chance at happiness for everyone. Linda, who had once been a warm, understanding school counselor known for her empathy with troubled teens, had helped her own boys thrive. The family photos that adorned the hallway told a story of holiday gatherings, shared laughter, and what appeared to be genuine love, a carefully constructed facade that would soon crumble before Peter's eyes. Before his latest deployment, Peter had believed he had built something beautiful from the ashes of his grief. He had no way of knowing that his absence would trigger a chain of events that would test not only his family's bonds, but also the very meaning of loyalty, trust, and forgiveness. Under the buzzing fluorescent lights in the kitchen, which cast harsh shadows across Melissa's makeshift bedroom, Peter stood frozen. A thin mattress lay in the corner, surrounded by carefully arranged school books and a small battery-operated reading lamp. The sight of his daughter's neatly folded clothes stacked in plastic bins made his stomach churn. She had been living like this for months, adapting to circumstances no child should ever face. Peter's voice cracked as he knelt beside Melissa, who clutched his uniform jacket as if she might vanish. The heavy question hung in the air, mingling with the lingering scent of microwave dinners and cleaning supplies. In a trembling whisper, Melissa recounted, "When you stopped writing," she pulled away slightly, reaching under her mattress to retrieve a bundle of envelopes tied with a faded blue ribbon. "Linda said you weren't writing anymore because you'd found a new family overseas, But I knew you wouldn't do that, Daddy. Peter's hands trembled as he examined the unopened letters, each bearing his distinctive handwriting. Every week, without fail, he had written to his daughter, sharing stories of his deployment, asking about her studies, and reminding her of his unwavering love. Yet the postmarks revealed a harrowing truth. Linda had been systematically intercepting every letter for the past 6 months. The reality began to crystallize before him. This was not a mere case of family discord or stepmother-stepdaughter tension. It was calculated cruelty, a methodical dismantling of a child's world. His eyes were drawn to the kitchen calendar on the wall, its dates marked with small red X's. Upon closer inspection, Peter realized these corresponded with Linda's weekend trips with the boys, leaving Melissa locked away like a dark family secret. She said it was temporary, Melissa explained in a slightly stronger voice in her father's presence. Just until Kyle's room was renovated, but then weeks passed as she gestured to the makeshift living space she had created. I try to make it work, Daddy. I even started learning to cook since I was here anyway. A weak smile crossed her face, a moment of attempted bravery that broke Peter's heart. The sound of footsteps on the front porch interrupted their reunion. Peter's military instincts kicked in as he moved toward the kitchen door, positioning himself protectively between it and his daughter. Instead of Linda's key in the lock, a gentle knock sounded, accompanied by a soft, concerned voice. Melissa, it's Karen. I brought you some lunch, honey. Standing at the kitchen door was Karen Mitchell, her hands trembling as she carried a covered casserole dish. In every way, she was everything Linda was not. Warm, genuine, with kind eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled. For 6 months, Karen had been Melissa's secret guardian, a lifeline in an increasingly isolated world. I'm Karen Mitchell, she said, meeting Peter's questioning gaze. I moved in next door about 7 months ago. I've been watching over Melissa whenever I could. Peter unlocked the door and noticed how Karen's eyes immediately went to Melissa, checking for any signs of distress, a practiced gesture that spoke volumes about their established routine. The aroma of homemade chicken pot pie filled the kitchen, and for a moment, Melissa's face brightened. I figured out something was wrong when I saw you studying by flashlight through the kitchen window late one night, Melissa explained, straightening her wrinkled clothes. Karen set the casserole down, her hands nervously clasping and unclasping. I actually tried reporting it, Captain Morgan, 3 times in fact, but Linda, she's well connected with the school board and respected in the community. She always had an explanation, saying you were troubled and making up stories for attention. As Karen's voice caught, she revealed that she had done more than just provide meals. Over time, she had slipped textbooks through the window, graded Melissa's homework, and most importantly, given her hope through whispered conversations and notes passed under the kitchen door. Karen had kept Melissa's spirit from completely breaking. I started bringing extra food when I realized the boys were gone every weekend, Karen continued in a measured tone. We even developed a system. 3 taps on the window meant food. 2 meant Linda was coming. 1, that you were not alone. Peter watched, deeply moved, as his daughter moved naturally to stand beside Karen, the bond between them evident in the gentle way Karen's hand rested on Melissa's shoulder. In his absence, this caring stranger had become Melissa's protector, risking her own career and reputation in a town where Linda's influence ran deep. There was more to learn. Captain Karen Mitchell, with a steady but cautious tone, revealed that she had also discovered disturbing notes from Jay and Kyle. She reached into her bag and hesitated before handing Peter a folded piece of paper in distinctly teenage handwriting. Ms. Mitchell's mom took Melissa's phone again. Can you make sure she gets my old calculus notes? Don't tell her they're from me. The note read. This was not an isolated incident. Karen produced more notes. Jay had been leaving his lunch money in Melissa's locker since March, and Kyle had been slipping his desserts under the kitchen door when Linda was not looking. They're trapped in their own way, Karen explained softly. Linda tells Jay that one wrong move could send him back to his father, and she reminds Kyle that she's the only one who has ever supported his academic dreams. A particularly revealing note caught Peter's attention. It read, Ms. T, Mom's taking us to Florida this weekend for my birthday, but it's not until November. Something's wrong. Please watch Melissa, Kyle. The pieces were falling into place. Linda had not just isolated Melissa. She had orchestrated a complex web of emotional manipulation, pitting her children against each other while maintaining a perfect facade for the outside world. The weekend trips, the locked doors, the intercepted letters, all were part of a calculated strategy to break the bonds between siblings and destroy any evidence of her actions. Peter's voice came out hoarse as he asked, "Where are they now?" Melissa answered that they were still in Florida. Linda said they're touring colleges, but Kyle's only 14, Karen added. Stepping forward with a protective resolve, Peter noted that regardless of Linda's schedule to return the next day, all 3 children needed protection. "They've been fighting this battle alone for too long," he said, the sound of the kitchen clocks ticking punctuating the silence in a house where time had stood still for months. Peter Morgan, who had faced enemy fire without flinching, now confronted a different kind of battle, a domestic war zone that had become his home during his absence. In the dining room, once the center of family meals, a timeline of evidence was displayed, meticulously documented records that painted a disturbing picture of systematic abuse. With Karen's help, Peter methodically sorted through 8 months of family records. Bank statements revealed unexplained withdrawals from the children's college funds, money that Linda had access to during his deployment. School records starkly contrasted the achievements of Kyle and Jay, who maintained privileged positions in advanced placement courses, with Melissa's plummeting grades and numerous unexplained absences, all of which Linda had conveniently authorized. The administration trusted her implicitly, and no one questioned the guidance counselor's explanations. Yet, the most damning evidence came from Melissa's personal diary, discovered hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the kitchen. Its entries chronicled a gradual descent into isolation that began with subtle changes in Linda's behavior. The diary detailed, in vivid language, the transformation of a once warm household into one dominated by control and manipulation. From the entry on February 15th, where Linda casually mentioned that the boys needed more space for their studies and suggested that Melissa temporarily move into the guest room, to the entries that followed, the narrative revealed a pattern. Melissa recounted how the guest room furniture vanished, how her phone disappeared with Linda's dismissive explanations, and how her once vibrant world had contracted steadily under Linda's expanding control. One entry, dated just 2 weeks earlier, stood out. "Jay sneaked me Mom's old locket today. He said he found it in Linda's drawer along with Dad's letters. Linda told me Mom never left anything for me, but I knew she was lying. Mom would love me. I just have to hold on until Dad comes home. He always keeps his promises." The locket, a small heart-shaped relic that had belonged to Sarah, now lay on the table as a poignant symbol of what had been lost. Peter had spent years searching for it after Sarah's death, planning to give it to Melissa when she was older. Yet Linda had claimed it was lost in their last move. As the sun began to set and cast long shadows across the mounting evidence of Linda's betrayal, Karen's sharp intake of breath broke through the heavy silence. She held up a stack of papers found in Linda's home office. "Captain Morgan," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger, "these are transfer papers. Linda's been planning to move the boys to a private school in Florida. And there's something else." She then revealed a document on official letterhead. Paperwork to relinquish custody of Melissa to the state, citing unmanageable behavioral issues, dated for the following month. The revelation hung in the air like a physical weight. This was not simply about family discord or step-family tension. Linda had been systematically preparing to dismantle the entire family piece by piece, all while maintaining her reputation as a devoted mother and respected community member. As evening descended on the Morgan residence, Karen's thorough search through Linda's office uncovered even more. Inside a hidden compartment in the bottom drawer of a filing cabinet lay a leather-bound journal and a stack of medical records dating back 15 years. Karen explained with a voice that blended professional detachment and growing concern that Linda had been hospitalized for severe depression after her first husband abandoned her and the boys, and that she had undergone extensive therapy. Yet, More recent records showed that Linda had stopped taking her medication shortly after Peter's deployment, a fact that would come to define her gradual psychological collapse. Peter leaned forward, examining the journal entries that chronicled Linda's gradual descent. The neat, measured strokes of her handwriting had become increasingly erratic. In one entry, she described the arrival of Peter's letters, written like clockwork each week, a stark contrast to the sparse correspondence with her own sons. Jay had once asked about the abundance of letters Peter had written to Melissa, noticing the hurt in his eyes. Karen gently recounted how, when the boys saw the love in Peter's words, they began to realize that their father had never written such heartfelt letters before. Yet, Linda's manipulation was relentless. She had not only intercepted Peter's letters, but had also used them as tools to instill fear and division among the children. In Karen's measured voice, the evidence slowly painted a disturbing picture. Linda had been orchestrating a psychological warfare far beyond simple family discord. Every intercepted letter, every locked door, and every marked date on the kitchen calendar revealed a calculated strategy to isolate Melissa and pit her against her brothers. Even when Karen herself intervened, bringing homemade casseroles, extra food, textbooks, and whispered words of comfort, Linda's influence loomed large over the household. The system of taps on the window that Karen described symbolized not only care, but also the covert resistance against Linda's oppressive control. Peter's heart ached as he spread the notes across the kitchen counter. Each note was a fragment of a larger, more disturbing story. From Jay's desperate plea for Karen to check on Melissa during thunderstorms, to messages from Kyle that chronicled the clandestine study partnership maintained despite 4 separations, to declarations that the boys had been trying to protect their sister at all costs. But Linda, Karen said softly, she is a master of manipulation. She tells Jay that one wrong move could send him back to his father, and she reminds Kyle that she's the only one who has ever supported his academic dreams. The realization struck Peter like a physical blow. The letters he had lovingly penned to Melissa were not just lost. They had been weaponized to fuel Linda's campaign of isolation and control. Just then, the sound of footsteps on the front porch interrupted the heavy atmosphere. Instead of Linda's key in the lock, there was now a gentle knock and a concerned voice. "Melissa, it's me." "Karen," she said again, reaffirming her role as Melissa's guardian. Meanwhile, as Peter watched his daughter move naturally to stand beside Karen, the bond between them was unmistakable. Karen's hand rested gently on Melissa's shoulder, an act that symbolized the quiet strength and protection that had grown in Peter's absence. As the day turned to late afternoon, Peter began to document the grim evidence that had transformed his home into an impromptu investigation site. The dining room table, once the heart of familial meals, now displayed a timeline of evidence. Bank statements showing unexplained withdrawals from the children's college funds, school records that contrasted the academic performances of Jay and Kyle with Melissa's declining grades and mounting absences, and, most heartbreakingly, Melissa's personal diary. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard, the diary chronicled her gradual descent into isolation, a descent marked by Linda's subtle but destructive behavior. Each entry, from a suggestion that Melissa move into the guest room to the day her phone mysteriously disappeared, was a testament to the psychological confinement imposed by Linda. One particularly devastating entry detailed how Jay had secretly retrieved the locket, a treasured memento from Sarah, and how Linda had lied about its importance. The locket, once meant to be a symbol of enduring love, now lay on the table as an emblem of betrayal. Karen, ever the vigilant guardian, then produced a stack of additional documents from Linda's home office. Among them were transfer papers indicating Linda's plan to move the boys to a private school in Florida, and an official letter relinquishing custody of Melissa to the state on fabricated grounds. The enormity of Linda's scheme became undeniable. She had not only isolated Melissa physically, but had also created an environment of emotional terror, a complex web of manipulation that pitted her own children against one another. With every piece of evidence, the full scale of Linda's calculated cruelty emerged. Karen recounted how she had intercepted extra food deliveries, how Jay and Kyle had left secret notes and money for Melissa, and how the carefully arranged schedule of Linda's weekend trips correlated perfectly with the dates on the kitchen calendar marked with red X's. Every intercepted letter, every hushed note left under the door, and every secret communication between the siblings was a testament to Linda's systematic campaign of isolation and emotional abuse. In the midst of this unfolding nightmare, Peter's military training, once his shield against enemy fire, now faltered in the face of domestic horror. The kitchen's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the remnants of a life that had been carefully dismantled piece by piece. Determined to protect his children, Peter transformed his living room into a command center. With Karen by his side, he meticulously documented the evidence, photographing the makeshift bedroom, collecting bank statements, and preserving the intercepted letters, knowing that the truth would be his strongest weapon in the battle for his family's future. Soon, an update arrived. A text from Jay revealed that Linda was returning ahead of schedule. The boys, Jay and Kyle, were still in Florida, and Linda's carefully orchestrated facade was about to be exposed. Peter's voice was firm yet gentle as he turned to Karen. "Will you take Melissa tonight? My house is within the school district, and the custody order will cover her temporary placement." Melissa, who had been quietly sorting through her mother's old photographs at the dining room table, asked softly, "What about Jay and Kyle?" "They try to help me, Daddy. We can't leave them with her." Peter knelt beside her and reassured, "The custody order covers all three of you, sweetheart. When Linda arrives tomorrow, the boys will come directly here. Judge Harrison has already arranged for a family counselor to be present." Karen added softly that her sister Beth, a trauma counselor from Denver, would also be flying in the next day to help with the transition, ensuring that the children would receive professional support. As midnight approached, the plan was executed with military precision. Melissa's few belongings were carefully packed and transferred to Karen's house. Peter took one last series of photographs, documenting the condition of the kitchen that had served as damning evidence of Linda's abuse before he left. At the kitchen doorway, Melissa paused, clutching her mother's locket, and whispered, "Dad, promise you won't let her separate us again. Jay and Kyle, they're my brothers now, no matter what Linda says." Peter embraced his daughter, recognizing in her words the same strength that had once characterized her mother. "I promise, sweetheart. Tomorrow we start rebuilding our family, all of us together." As he watched Melissa walk safely to Karen's house next door, Peter prepared himself for the confrontation that loomed on the horizon, a confrontation that would demand more than military strategy or legal maneuvering. It would require the delicate balance of justice, mercy, and the wisdom to rebuild what had been broken. By the following morning, a surreal calm had descended over the once turbulent household. At precisely 9:47 a.m., surveillance footage from Tampa International Airport confirmed what Peter already knew. Linda was on her way home, accompanied by Jay and Kyle, unaware that her carefully constructed world was on the verge of collapse. Peter sat in his study, surrounded by the evidence of Linda's deception, when the first text from Jay arrived. "Mom's acting strange. Keeps checking her phone and making calls." Minutes later, another message followed. "She knows something's wrong." Even as the house alarm had been triggered the previous night, Peter could see Karen in her kitchen, preparing breakfast for Melissa, who for the first time in months appeared to be sleeping peacefully on a proper bed, surrounded by the warmth of genuine care. The contrast between the two households could not have been more stark. At 10:23 a.m., the sound of tires on gravel announced Linda's arrival. Peter watched through his study window as she emerged from her luxury SUV, her designer outfit and perfectly coiffed hair a testament to her obsession with appearances. Jay and Kyle entered with tense bodies and alert eyes, immediately scanning the surroundings, a learned behavior born from years of enduring Linda's unpredictable moods. As Linda's forced cheerfulness barely masked an undercurrent of tension, Peter observed the subtle resistance in the way Jay positioned himself protectively in front of his younger brother. Linda's manufactured smile froze when she stepped into the foyer and saw the evidence Peter had deliberately arranged on the wall. Not only were Melissa's school photos displayed, but also printed copies of Linda's journal entries, medical records, and bank statements, meticulously arranged like a grotesque family album. Linda's voice wavered as she attempted to explain herself. "I can explain everything," she stammered. But Peter's stern reply cut through her excuses like a blade. "The boys know everything, Linda. The letters you intercepted, the money you moved to Florida." He turned to Jay and Kyle. "Your bags are already packed. Karen is waiting next door. You'll be staying there with your sister while we sort this out." In that moment, Linda's transformation was instantaneous. The polished facade crumbled, revealing raw, desperate anger beneath. "My sons are not going anywhere with that woman," she shrieked. "She's poisoned you against me, just like Sarah did, turning my own children." Jay's steady voice finally surfaced, filled with years of repressed anger. "Mom, you had no right. Melissa slept on a kitchen floor for 6 months while you locked her away and intercepted my letters. We watched you lie to Dad, and Kyle cried himself to sleep every night hearing you through the wall." As the boys moved toward the door, Linda's next words froze them. "If you leave now, you'll end up just like your father, alone, worthless, begging to see children who don't want you anymore." Inside Karen's home, Melissa stood at the window, clutching her mother's locket as if it could protect her from further harm. Beth, Karen's sister and a compassionate trauma counselor, gently placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine suburban landscape, a stark contrast to the emotional tempest raging within. "Your brothers are coming, Melissa," Beth said softly, "and that takes tremendous courage." Through the window, the siblings watched as Jay and Kyle walked steadily toward Karen's house, their steps growing more confident with each yard that separated them from their mother's oppressive influence. Linda's desperate symphony of threats and pleading began to fade as the boys crossed the threshold of safety. Inside Karen's living room, the transformation was immediate. Kyle, the younger brother who had maintained perfect grades despite the turmoil at home, finally let his carefully constructed facade crumble as he rushed to Melissa, enveloping her in a fierce hug. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice breaking. "We should have done more, should have told someone sooner. Every night I heard you through the wall. I even played classical music hoping it would help you sleep." Jay, standing by the door with a tall, protective frame, remained resolute despite the years of responsibility that had aged him beyond his years. In a moment of raw vulnerability, he revealed a folder from his backpack containing details about the Florida school transfers, the new house, everything that Linda had planned to use against them, including a fabricated claim that Melissa had run away because she couldn't handle being a troubled teen anymore. Beth moved quietly among them, her trauma counselor's eye assessing each child's emotional state. "You've all been carrying this burden alone for far too long," she observed gently. "But look at you now, together, supporting each other. That is not what broken people do. That is what survivors do." As the sound of breaking glass from the Morgan house interrupted the fragile moment, they could see Linda in full meltdown outside, her carefully maintained image shattering like a fragile vase. Peter, with the calm of a trained soldier, blocked her path toward Karen's house. "My sons are not going anywhere with you," he stated firmly. "You have poisoned them against me, just as Sarah did by turning them against our family." Jay's voice, steady and resolute, finally surfaced. "Mom, you have no right. Those letters weren't meant to hurt us. They were expressions of our father's love. You destroyed them, and in doing so, you destroyed our connection to her." Kyle's tears fell freely now as he added, "I remember finding one of them once, with for Melissa's 16th birthday written in beautiful handwriting. When I asked about it, you locked the drawer and said it was just old paperwork." Beth leaned forward, her professional compassion softening the harsh reality. "What you did was a profound violation, Linda. You didn't just destroy papers. You tried to erase a mother's final gifts to her daughter. But you cannot erase the love those letters represent." Melissa, gathering a worn photograph of Sarah taken just weeks before her death from the family album, confessed quietly. I used to imagine what those letters said. On bad nights, I would make up words, thinking Mom might have written them, so I wouldn't feel so alone. Peter's heart ached as he realized that while he had written those letters with the intention of comforting his daughter, they had instead become weapons in Linda's psychological warfare, designed to inflict pain on all three children. The morning's confrontation had now escalated to a point where Linda's meticulously planned schemes were laid bare for all to see. With Karen's unwavering support and the heartfelt testimony of the children, Peter spread the evidence across the kitchen counter. Every bank statement, every intercepted letter, and every carefully kept diary entry spoke of systematic isolation and emotional abuse, a campaign designed to dismantle the family unit. Your own letters, Peter declared softly, have become the instruments of your division, but they have also shown us what real parental love looks like. As the day wore on, Karen gently explained that Linda's manipulation extended even further. She had orchestrated Florida-school transfers for Jay and Kyle and had spread carefully crafted rumors about Melissa's mental state among her colleagues. Linda wasn't just isolating Melissa, Karen said. She was systematically erasing all traces of Sarah and me from your lives, creating a narrative of abandonment that would justify her actions. The weight of this revelation rippled through the room as Peter carefully reviewed each piece of evidence, a testament to the calculated cruelty that had infiltrated every aspect of their family life. Later that afternoon, in a meeting at the local psychiatric center with Dr. Matthews, the facility's chief psychiatrist, the full extent of Linda's mental deterioration was revealed. Dr. Matthews explained that Linda's psychological evaluation uncovered severe underlying conditions that had gone untreated for years. The abandonment by her first husband had triggered a cascading pattern of paranoid behavior and control mechanisms. Dr. Matthews presented a series of journal entries dating back to Peter's deployment, showing a progressive breakdown in Linda's ability to distinguish reality from her paranoid fantasies. The isolation of Melissa, she explained, was not just punishment. It was a calculated attempt at control, driven by your wife's deep-seated fear of abandonment and replacement. Peter listened in disbelief as the narrative of manipulation was expanded upon through carefully documented evidence. Interruptions in the consultation room brought further chaos. Linda's attorney, now changed to Richard Stevens for this account, appeared alongside Beth, who had been appointed as the family's advocate. Richard's polished demeanor stood in stark contrast to Beth's compassionate professionalism. We are prepared to discuss terms for a monitored rehabilitation program and supervised visitation rights, Richard announced in clipped tones. Peter's response was firm. Absolutely not. The damage you've inflicted on these children goes beyond physical isolation. They have lost their sense of security and trust in a family that once meant everything. As text messages, documented threats, and manipulated bank statements were reviewed, it became clear that Linda's actions had been methodically planned to sever the familial bonds that held them together. Dr. Matthews provided further insight into the profound trauma that the children had experienced. Jay's premature assumption of adult responsibilities, Kyle's coping through academic perfectionism, and Melissa's profound sense of isolation all pointed to deep psychological scars that would require careful, specialized therapy. We must help them process these experiences, Dr. Matthews advised, so that acknowledging Linda's illness does not invalidate the very real pain they have suffered. The court had since granted Peter full custody of all three children, with recommendations for ongoing therapeutic support and controlled contact with Linda as her treatment progressed. As the day gave way to a quieter evening, the once chaotic household began its slow transformation toward healing. Karen's home evolved into a sanctuary, a makeshift family counseling center where Beth and Peter worked tirelessly to help the children rebuild their shattered trust and sense of self. Over time, the remnants of Linda's oppressive control were replaced with structured routines, counseling sessions, and small moments of joy that allowed the children to see the promise of a future beyond their trauma. Weeks later, during a progress review at the psychiatric center, Dr. Matthews noted significant improvements in the children's emotional states. Jay, who had once been burdened with the weight of premature responsibility, now showed signs of reclaiming his youth and enjoying moments of carefree optimism. Kyle's piano recitals had become an expressive outlet for his feelings, and Melissa, though still bearing scars, had begun to emerge as a resilient young woman dedicated to helping others navigate similar challenges. The transformed Morgan residence, now filled with warm morning light streaming through new windows and a kitchen that had replaced the old, makeshift space, serve as a testament to the slow but determined process of healing and rebuilding family bonds. On one memorable Christmas Eve year after Peter's unexpected return, the home radiated warmth and renewal. The living room, adorned with thoughtfully chosen decorations, bore the marks of a family journeying from trauma to healing. Karen and Beth had become cherished extended family members, no longer merely professional supports. As Kyle's piano filled the room with a hopeful melody, and Jay animatedly shared his plans to advocate for families in crisis, Melissa arranged holiday cookies, a symbol of creative resilience. Amid this festive backdrop, Peter watched his children with quiet pride. "I promise," he said softly, "we will continue rebuilding our family day by day, united in love and trust." In that final moment, as snow began to fall softly outside and the gentle strains of classical music filled the air, the story of the Morgan family, once marred by calculated cruelty and isolation, transformed into a testament to the enduring power of resilience, understanding, and unconditional love. Even after the storm of betrayal and manipulation, the bonds of family proved unbreakable. They had learned that while healing is a continuous journey filled with both triumphs and setbacks, it is the unity forged through adversity that ultimately lights the way to redemption. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories like this one. Share this video with your friends and family, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned for our next video, and check out others you might have missed. See you next time.